Go on mute. All right, good evening and welcome. I'd like to call the Historic Preservation Review Commission regular meeting for Tuesday, September 17th to order. It is now 6:02 p.m. And let's start with the roll call.
Shannon Glazer.
Here.
Patty Tyler.
Yes.
Vice Chair Michael Davenport.
Here.
Chair Lisa Manifold.
Here. Thank you, Linda. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 20th, 2024.
One great make a point. When someone's absent, should we be marking it like, is it an excused absence? Just
Oh,
so
you
we
mean-
have that for the record.
I don't think Rachel is a member anymore.
I mean, do you mean me last week
Yeah.
or last month rather?
Right.
But you did call.
Well, I notified, it wasn't like,
So wouldn't that be an excuse, wouldn't that be an excused absence if someone calls in? So I guess I'd make an amendment to that be noted in the minutes, that it was an excused absence.
Okay.
Never heard of excused or not excused.
Well,
but I'm
on
happy to
most-
do what the board would like.
But on most commissions or councils, if there are 3 unexcused absences, correct, that is a reason for the rest of the council to contemplate whether or not they need to stay, so they need to be excused or excused. Okay,
That's it.
okay, anybody else? I read through them and did not catch that, so thank you.
I don't think we've ever done that.
Yeah, I just pulled up, removal of members would be in case of inefficiency, neglect of duty, excessive absenteeism or malfeasance in office, excessive absenteeism being 3 consecutive meetings missed, or failure to attend at least 60% of the regularly scheduled meetings in a 6-month period. So I certainly think Shannon's okay either way, but.
yeah.
Well, unexcused is if you don't let us know that something happened, so you're fine.
Right.
Are there any other corrections for the minutes? All right, I will come back to, I will take a motion to approve the minutes from August 20th, 2024.
I move.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Please raise your right hand. Any opposed? So passed. Before we get started, are there any public comments? You guys are welcome.
Is there another area where we do comments?
During the hearing.
During the hearing? Okay,
We don't have any right now.
okay.
Yeah, no general public comments online, it looks like, so it would just be.
Well, actually, let me, I'll take a chair. So are you here to discuss, to talk about the public hearing with the powder house? Is that,
Yes.
okay, I just wanna make sure because during the hearing, we only talk about that. I didn't want you guys
Yeah, no,
to
it's about,
not miss that, to miss your opportunity. Thank you. Of course. Does anyone feel they have a conflict of interest today? Hearing none, let's move on to new business, and we will start with the public hearing, certificate of appropriateness for the Idaho Springs Powder House. This is a public hearing before the HPRC of the City of Idaho Springs on a certificate of appropriateness, COA, for the Idaho Springs Powder House. The commission will decide to either recommend approval or disapproval during tonight's meeting. This hearing is now declared open at 6:05 p.m. And we'll start with staff testimony.
Okay, thank you. For the record, I'm Briggs here, Community Development Planner. As mentioned, this is a request for a certificate of appropriateness to rehabilitate the Idaho Springs Powder House. It's a city property at the intersection of Soda Creek Road and Little Bear Road. It'll involve new roof, new doors, repairs to the walls, foundation walls, tuck pointing border to existing walls as needed. With the long-term goal of, of course, restoring this, and then more long-term, potentially creating a little park or historical museum, but that's not, kind of a museum exhibit. But at this stage, there's no discussion of that. Talking to Andy today, city administrator, he mentioned phase 1 of this project is restoration of the structure, which would happen within, if this were approved, the 12-month period of approval. And he's mentioned it's already in the budget and would be a budget item for 2025, and we'll try to get someone on board ahead of that so that we can get started on it as soon as possible. But the additional work for like a small city park would be a longer term project, and that's outside the purview of the COA likely anyway. So I wanted to note that now, just to talk about more plans, and the Haynes who are here as the architects, maybe talk about that more. I'm not sure, but anyway. I will just talk a little bit about background. This was designated for local historic designation in 2008 due to association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of the city's history and embodies the distinctive characteristics of a type, period, or method of construction, which is why we need COA since it's locally designated. So Haynes, of course, have been working on this for quite a long time. The historic structure assessment occurred back in 2013 with determination of a few items necessary to rehabilitate the building. We are now hoping to do all of these items. I will go through the criteria quickly and then I'll let you two get more into some of the technical aspects of what's proposed if there's questions on that. We believe that it's consistent with and promotes the purposes of these regulations as set out in subsection 22-2A of the municipal code. We believe it will foster civic pride in the beauty and accomplishments of the past, protect the unique scenic and historic atmosphere and character of this particular site. Potentially could strengthen the city's economy, preserve and protect the continued existence of this historic structure and site. And will use, summarizing this one, it'll use compatible and appropriate materials. It appears to meet criterion number 2. Proposed work will not adversely materially affect its historic quality. Proposed work is intended to use historically appropriate materials, and the assessment, clearly shows that a lot of detail has gone into how to match the missing elements, match existing materials on site, including with mortar, with stones used, roofing materials, and the like. Third one, proposed work will have no adverse material effect on the historic atmosphere and character of the district. Don't believe that there will be any adverse material effects on the historic atmosphere of this site. It won't necessarily have the same use, obviously, as what was done in the past, powder house, storing of ammunitions and things like that, but it will pay homage to that by, hopefully one day being a museum exhibit where folks can look at what it may have been and get a little bit of that history that currently is probably missing if someone were to look at the building without any context. Appears to be in compliance with our current applicable design guidelines. It will match original roof form and roof materials. It appears that it will match materials for the walls. The door, I don't know exactly what the door might have been historically. It looked like in the historical site assessment that it was potentially made of wood. Could be it, but often with these doors would have been metal, which is proposed here. It certainly is in keeping with uses of this type.
May I interrupt and just,
that as well.
no, I think that in a previous, when we looked at your proposal from before, that you showed other powerhouses around the state that were using steel doors.
Right.
Am I remembering that correctly?
Well, actually, it's a jail that's at the Red Cliff Town Hall.
Is this the rounded one? That's got the little rounded roof?
No, this was in Red Cliff, but there are some photos in the historic structure assessment of some other powder houses. But you cannot see any of the doors. Here's one that's rounded. Revenue Powder House.
Oh, that's a little rounded. Yes, that's a rounded roof.
Right.
Well,
Can't really see the
doors.
Yeah.
and it's possible I was confused about what the original door was, because I know it mentioned the original door frame, of course, was wood, which it'll still be proposed. The door frame will be wood. The proposed door will be steel construction, which is in keeping with what you might expect for a powder house. So it appears to be appropriate materials. Finally, another important consideration is there are a lot of missing elements at this time that will have to be replaced. And if work is not done, this building certainly will not last forever. And there's a chance, at some point if work isn't done, it's been a long time coming, we could lose structure altogether. So I believe that overall, this substantially complies with our guidelines to improve the long-term. It will allow this building to continue for another 100+ years and also act as a public benefit to help speak to our heritage and allow it to be used and people to learn about the history of this site. So with that said, staff is recommending approval of this COA for the exterior rehabilitation work. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Dylan. Continuing with the applicant, is there anything you guys would like to add to this?
Can you both just state your name for the record, please?
Sure.
I'm Tim Hain with Hain Architects.
Great.
And I'm Chris Hain with Hain Architects.
Do you swear, please,
I swear.
right hand? Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
thank you.
Yes.
Great.
What else would you like to share with us about this? I mean, I've seen some of it, I think, because we've talked about this in city council, but I don't know how much has been shared with HPRC.
Right. Anyway, yeah, we did do a historic structure assessment of the building back in 2013 and took, a lot of photos. And then since then, Tim and I have been back to the site. And in our construction documents, we've included photographs that we took back in 2013 and then ones that were taken more recently. And you can clearly see that there is more deterioration. The roof, was basically collapsed, so
It's been
moisture,
removed.
yeah, in fact, it's been removed since just in the last month or so. And then, there was a lot of stuff that was people that just put in there, garbage or whatever, and the city cleared that out for us. But fortunately, when we were there in 2013, we were still able to look at like the floor framing, the flooring, the roof framing. So, we're glad that we were there earlier. And then, did you want to say it?
I'm saying essentially, we're trying to bring it back exactly as it was. All the wood components we're calling for all those to be replaced in kind in their existing locations as well. So the floor framing would be pressure treated wood for the joists, random width boards for the floor. And then essentially the same thing's happening up in the ceiling. 2x4 rafters. We'll be putting new 2x4s in the same locations as the originals where there's pockets in the joists to receive them. We're going to be putting random width boards for the roof sheathing. And something that we're adding is a layer of OSB sheathing on top of that, which you won't be able to see from the inside. It'll all be the boards. And then a new, what was originally there was a rolled roofing, asphalt rolled roofing, but we're going to be replacing it with what's called modified bitumen system, which is essentially the same sort of look. And it needs something good like OSB to be adhered to. So that's why we've added the OSB as an additional layer, which will add a little bit of beef to the structure as well. So that's the wood part, and then the stone's going to be tuck pointed. There's some fairly large cracks that go all the way through the walls. Those need to be addressed, and then the whole building will be tuck pointed. That's the majority of the work.
And
And then there's the doors.
right, the door, just to be clear, we do not know what door was on that building originally. But based on the type of hardware that exists on the building right now, it's like these steel strap hinges, real heavy duty. We just, figured it was a steel door, given that it was a powder house.
It's conceivable it could have been a wood door, but it would have been attached to those steel straps that go across. There's some really large steel pins and what set into the masonry, and there's a large keeper for a hasp. So I think you could go either way and make it work, but we thought steel would be.
Like it was more appropriate.
Yeah.
And
Back in
then-
the day, you don't want people breaking into your post house and stealing dynamite.
That's a risk.
So, try to make it as secure
This
as
might have been a
possible.
place where they spent a little. It seems to me they did spend money on this because the structure is still there, even though it's cracked and it has not been protected. You know, and the roof is gone and like, to me, that seems like this was something that there was care taken with how it was built because it's still standing.
That's a pretty stout stone masonry building.
Yeah,
It
it's
is.
18-inch thick
Yeah.
stone walls. So.
There's this, we're not addressing the site really with this project, but the city does want to develop the site eventually and be able to use that powerhouse as a museum. And we were talking about doing an interpretive sign out near the roadway. But also, we had this handout back when we were talking about the site, and Lisa, this might be what you're thinking of also. But this, here are a couple of doors, these were,
That's what I was thinking,
at the
yes.
Red Cliff, it's at the Red Cliff
Yeah,
Town
that's
Hall. It's actually their jail, it's a very small building, but I don't know, we saw the strap hinges on the powerhouse.
They're very
and-
similar, yeah, they're very similar to that
Right,
one.
So,
Yeah.
and it's such a heavy duty
Here, I'll pass this over to the other side. That is exactly what I was remembering. Well, I think given the fact that we already know this is a place where people dump things, and it has been a dumping ground, I would actually prefer a heavier barrier. I do have one question for you guys. If you don't mind if I ask a question.
Oh.
Are we gonna leave the air holes, like there are vents down at the bottoms and the smaller air holes, we're not gonna?
Yeah.
Try to keep it as authentic as possible.
And there are there is screen in those openings, in a couple of the openings.
I saw
Some of the screen is missing, so we wanna put that back, restore it to its original appearance.
Less nesting possibilities.
Yeah, right.
That's true. Does anybody else have any questions?
I saw that you did this in some of the earlier studies, but as a suggestion for future, not to make this change now on this application, but to put on the cover page that this is a historic restoration project. And part of that is sort of trying to anticipate, sometimes the subs don't realize that, no matter what the picture looks like. And so it's just to put a reminder on the front page, this is, it's to be treated differently than a normal construction project. I'm
Right.
not asking you to change that cover because that's the most expensive page.
That doesn't matter. Now, we actually call it a rehabilitation.
Well, that was the second question I had, is it a restoration or is it rehabilitation?
Well, I guess it's a combination of both. Because, we're adding that front door, that entry door, and we're adding a secondary door, which is gonna be like a
Security grill.
security grill that you can look through. So in my mind, that's more like a rehabilitation. We're allowing that building to be used as a museum.
Okay,
So we are adding those doors to allow that function to occur.
so anyway, that's just a suggestion of having that on the cover page.
Okay.
Second question I had, and I may have missed it but it's a very thorough set of documents, very thorough specification. I may have missed it, but do you have like a pre-construction meeting with the contractor?
Yeah, we typically do, yeah,
Okay, and does staff usually go to that?
yeah, we sure do,
Are we gonna be putting this out to bid?
yeah.
Okay, is that the goal, is that?
Okay. Is that in the specs that there is a pre-construction meeting?
No,
Okay, again, not to ask you to make a change, but that would be something else. I think it would be good for the future to put that in the specifications. There needs to be a pre-construction meeting involving staff, the architect, and the general contractor.
Absolutely.
yeah, we usually have a pre-bid meeting too, where we talk about that, but then even with like SHF projects.
Yeah. And this is more along the ideas of having the three together do a walk around of the building, so they're all seeing the same thing at the same time.
Oh yeah, for sure, yeah. That's required, it's actually required with the state historical fund grants, that we have a pre-construction meeting with the owner, a grant applicant, his.
SHF.
All right.
Are we going for grants for this? Or is this- I thought this was in 2024's budget too. I thought we had money set aside for this.
Andy mentioned that we'd had money set aside for a little while now.
I think it
And
was
it's
this
kind
year's
of been,
budget.
But, so I don't know precisely.
Because I think it was, this year was Central Rose House, the Powerhouse and the Visitor Center. Those were the three predominant projects that were in. And we'll have to ask. Let's see what's wrong. Okay, any further questions for?
And the third question, which is more for staff. Since the Sites and Facilities Committee is gonna be having their first meeting in a while by the end of this month, is there some way of actually not making the decision tonight so they have a chance to see this before a decision is made on the application? Would that create a problem?
I don't think that we have plans to bid this out in the next few weeks. We're tentatively, and I need to send out this invitation, tentatively planning for the Historic Sites and Facilities Committee that's now officially established to meet on the 30th. So if the commission wants to go this direction, we could continue a decision until next month to allow sites and facilities to discuss this.
Yeah, my suggestion would be is we go ahead and do everything. Maybe even talk about if people even want to do a Zoom vote in order not to delay it any further. But I think it would probably be good for that committee having its first meeting. I'm sure they would want to see this.
I'm gonna disagree, and I'll tell you why, because the Sites and Facilities, we did have private sites and facilities that were supposed to be doing this work. And because for whatever reason they weren't, the city has been forced to take on the role of applicant, and the city is always gonna be the applicant. But they have created sites and facilities so the sites and facilities can do that for them. I would rather start, I don't wanna delay this, this has gone through the process. And I will tell you, just as an aside, I think sites and facilities is going to have its free fall. You guys have a lot coming in your direction, but that's my opinion. I'll leave it up for the rest of the board. I don't.
The other thing I'll note is I'd be happy to, whichever way we land, whether we'll take it to them for formal discussion or it's just an update, I will certainly provide a full update to say, here's the here's the status of this project, which is now moving forward. So.
Well, I have an opinion. My understanding is that sites and facilities is to manage and let staff and city know if there's a problem with items, not to make the decision on what happens with rehab or rehabilitation. That belongs to Hprc. And if that's incorrect, let me know, but I see them as being two different entities. One that makes all the decision and guides, and the other one that is responsible for some of the work and lets Hprc know that there's a problem and needs to be worked on.
I think in municipal code, I don't think HPRC has that responsibility.
No, we're not sites and facilities, the way that the ordinance is written is that they will be overseeing and my hope is that they create a document for every single site that we own so that it is on city, premises and architects and contractors can access it. And they're helping to maintain the upkeep. So, oh God, this just crashed. How do we handle it? Or, oh, look, this might crash. You need to be aware of this. And then they will be acting as the applicant for city COAs. So they will the new sites and facilities gives them the ability to be the representative for the city doing COAs.
Okay, but they're not gonna make a decision on a COA. It's gonna be our group. So I agree with Lisa in that we should move forward, make our decision, and then they get updated on what the process was. Here's all the information on it. Here's what's gonna happen.
Would you think, this is, I just don't know, if we were to prepare something similar for each site, would we kind of want to see something like the historical site? So obviously this would be much more comprehensive than what sites and facilities might draft, but having something, a plan like the project manual specifications plus the historical site assessment for this particular structure seems like if we had that for every building, it would be quite beneficial.
I would like that, like, I would like to see, because it also means that if there, like, it's not this group, because this, a lot of this group has been out to a lot of our sites and facilities. It gives the group an idea of here's what we've done, here's what the, you know, the maintenance looks like right now. You know, here's what, I just think you can create a file for every single.
Should we, kind of going
No,
off,
we're all
should
this-
we be talking about this during the discussion more so than during,
I think we actually need to, thank you, I think we actually need to pull this back.
I think during discussion, maybe getting too roundabout to that.
Well, I think we're
More
here, like, here's
appropriate.
where we are, and we've gone this way a little bit. Any other questions for the applicant, for Dylan, or for the?
I had a question about the floor joists. I see that they're pressure treated lumber. Is there any risk of rot from that, from the wood just sitting directly on the ground?
That's why it's pressure treated.
That'll prevent that,
It's,
okay.
they're set directly on soil.
Good.
And that's how it was originally constructed and sort of duplicated, and
You won't see those.
you won't see those.
Yeah, because the flooring will be over the top.
Plus, there'll be a good roof up too.
It lasts a lot longer. It's still gonna eventually rot, but it does last much longer.
If it's kept dry, it should be good for quite a few decades, I would expect.
And we are calling for better drainage around the building.
There you go,
Oh,
Travis.
yes, well, away from the walls, you know, so the water doesn't.
I was just gonna ask that, like, what does the drainage look like
Yeah.
around the building, and do we beef it up a little bit? Yes, that would actually be good. Are there any other questions? Okay, anyone from the public? Did you guys sign in?
So they would have,
Oh, they would
because
sign.
that's stuff that's not on the agenda.
They are welcome to, how do we, normally we just haven't set up a podium, how do we want
Here,
to?
you wanna scooch over, Patty, so they can have a place to sit? Oh,
I think it's.
We can just talk about it.
Well, you do need to, state your name and address for the record and then hold your hand up and say the testimony you're gonna give is the truth, so, shall we?
yes, please.
Okay, can you please, state your names and address for the record, please?
Sure, yeah, Alicia Buckingham.
Brett Buckingham,
Brent, you said?
BRETT.
Okay,
That is our driveway, that you guys are talking about, the road on there, so that's why we're interested. We actually think it's a really cool project in general. We just, sorry.
swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So I think we're excited. I mean, it's cool. It's cool to find out. We've read the document and read the background and history. I think you sent it to me, so thank you for sending it to me. It has been used as kind of a dumping area. I think that whole area is used as a dumping area. I think that's one of our concerns is, you know, we do kind of deal with trespassing, dumping, chainsaws, illegal fires in the area, up the mining road up there. So that's obviously as homeowners, we have a concern. Also, you know, access to our property, because that is our only way to our property in and out. There's 3 homeowners that are impacted, but we are the primary ones who use that as our way in and out of our house. So kind of inviting the public is always something that we're recognizing as kind of the implications of it, but not necessarily from a rehabilitation or restoration perspective. Kind of segregating out those 2 issues certainly is appropriate. But you know, plowing our driveway, you know, making sure that, you know, we can still kind of get in and get out as we need to is certainly a concern. And then kind of inviting the general public to come out.
I do have one. So your driveway is, if you're looking at the documents, where the powder house is, there is a gate before the
That is
powder house.
our, yeah.
And so it looks like there's a proposed relocation of the
Moving that
gate.
I saw that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that is your driveway, and
That
there
is
are
our
3
driveway.
houses.
No,
It's a Forest Service easement, and then there's 3 mine claim properties that cross it. So the 2 other property owners and ourselves all have access to that road. Ours is our primary driveway to our home. There is no other
There's no other driveway.
access.
the 2 other homeowners their own.
They're on
Driveways.
Soda Creek, so they can get off.
Oh, so
on
you
Soda
guys
Creek.
are the only ones that this is your only access?
This is our only access.
Okay,
There are, one other property owner, our neighbor, uses it to access a portion of his property. And then the other homeowner is the,
He's got the old pump house, I've never been down that
the
road far
Cummings
enough.
Station mine, so that's.
Is it,
Ron's
Ron
place.
Lynch?
Shit,
Yeah.
Ron Lynch.
Okay, yeah, we know Ron.
So
can I, then with that, can I ask you a question?
Sure. Yeah.
Do we have an idea of what, because it has a gate, but I don't remember a gate when we were there, is that gate closed?
It's open,
No,
yeah,
we
we have it
don't-
open,
we don't
but it's,
close it.
it is there, yeah. It's there.
In,
Okay. No, I was just gonna say, do we have an idea of the gate or how we plan to, have we gone that far in terms of things and how we plan to help the homeowners?
I think long-term, I was talking to Andy, he said, obviously, this first phase of the Andy's the city administrator. First phase of this project, of course, is renovating and rehabilitating this particular structure. And so he said, well, talk to the homeowners, who would be impacted and see whether moving the gate now is appropriate, moving it, should we invite the public later if that's more appropriate? And that's something certainly separately we'd like to do, as well as once we come to a point where we are developing it for the public use, I would certainly like to have you all as part of that discussion to make sure that however it's developed works for you as well, because it sounds like there's obviously been some issues with the public anyway, without it being managed at all. But if there's a way we can better manage it so that it's has a lot more oversight.
Yeah.
Because it's, a city property as well, we don't want people dumping.
Right.
If we're spending significant investment to improve this building, we want it protected as well. So I think we're all aligned on that, but I think it's very important that we make sure that when it ultimately is more public, that it does not have negative impacts on your property.
Where is your house? Like from the first gate, are you
Yeah.
past the powder house?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we're about
Okay,
a
so way
quarter,
past.
we're about, it's about a quarter mile.
Okay,
So from the powder house, you go down about a quarter mile, so we pay a permit to the,
Forest
Forest
Service?
Service, thank you, I was like, National Parks is not correct, to the Forest Service, and then we go over Ron's property, we have an easement over his property, and then it gets to our property.
okay. I was just curious as to where your house is located.
I know we had talked to the city also about bringing some lighting to the site, and I think that would add some security to that site.
It is an area where
A lot of drug activity, there's a lot of jumping.
drinking, dumping, I mean, there's been a couch at the end of our driveway for 2.5 months, so we,
Even,
Nice place
even
to
cleaning
sit.
out the building, which they did a pretty good job, but they still have a 55-gallon drum and
would.
wood sitting there, that's been sitting there for a while. I'm not sure the culvert's been cleaned out. When we first moved in, the city was pretty good about maintaining that. It seems like that's kind of gone downhill a little bit,
How long have you lived there?
since 2021.
Oh, okay.
So I just pulled up here, kind of, the parcel that's the city's would be this first bit with
right
Powder
there.
House on it, and then this next bit where it says Little Bear Creek, which is hard to read on this map, is Forest Service. And
Coming Nation is Ron's property, and then we're Laura Gabriel right after. Ron's
And then
property.
that's the
Okay.
house, Houston's property.
That's the
Yeah.
other homeowners who also use our driveway, the driveway to access part of their property.
You can kind of see the road
Okay,
cutting through here, and then obviously.
That is our house right there where
where the cursor is?
Yeah, right there.
Okay,
um,
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
It sure is a lovely area, Tim and I go out there to look at the powder house, and it's,
Yeah.
the creek is so wonderful, it's just, really a nice area.
And we've always wondered what's down at the end of that road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people do.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, you get lucky when it's coming down.
Yeah, we get people walking around bicycles sometimes. And, people come down there. Obviously, with the park there, we're a little more concerned. Long term with some of the ramifications of that. And of course, trash up there and your activity increasing more than it already is, things like that, so. That's probably a discussion for another day.
Yeah, because today is actually, we're just
Yeah,
looking
right,
at
just
different
about the
routes,
bill.
but I am glad to hear from you guys because that's something that we need to keep in mind going forward. So
Yeah,
I
and
appreciate
I
you.
think just for this portion of it, our concern would just be that we can get in and out while they're doing construction.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
And I'll make note of all this and well, you have my contact info now. I'm a good contact for anything moving forward and I'll reach back out as we keep moving forward.
We appreciate that very much. Thank you, guys.
okay, do you guys have any other questions or any other comments?
No, ma'am, thank you.
No, thank you for being here, we
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
To the rest of the commission, any other comments, questions? Okay, thank you. The hearing is now closed at 6:37 PM. All right, discussion, and I think this is where we can do a little discussion. Do we want to do a conditional HOA? Do we want to do not HOA, COA, a conditional COA because we'd like to give sites and facilities a chance to look at it. Do we want to do a full COA? We just want to delay.
We'll do it.
Full COA? Mike,
I would say conditional.
conditional?
Well, actually, the preference would be to say postpone it. Postpone the actual decision or take a straw vote tonight and not make it official until after the other committee has looked at it.
I think from the timeline of the city, we likely, I don't know Andy's timeline for getting out a bid or anything like that for a contractor. I don't know that because the next official meeting would be 15th of October, and we certainly could, if we continued it to that meeting, or we continued it to a special meeting the first week of October
For
for
it to be a Zoom meeting done by
only
Zoom,
meeting.
and just for the sake of the vote.
I don't know that will slow things down too much.
My question is, do you anticipate sites and facilities having any issue with this project? It seems like it's pretty straightforward.
I don't know, because I just got appointed to it. I know it was raised during the appointments, a concern about this already being on the agenda and that committee has not seen it.
But that committee wasn't in, that committee, when this project started, that committee wasn't in play at all. That committee was only voted on about a month ago. And this has already been, like, I think it's unreasonable, and I know exactly the comment that we're talking about. I think it is unreasonable to expect that we go backwards on every single thing that we're working on right now. I didn't think that was a reasonable comment. I think with that, I'm also gonna go ahead and vote for a COA. I think you should definitely give an update to sites and facilities. I will say if sites and facilities has a huge issue, I would be happy to hear it. How do you guys feel about that? Like, I don't wanna shut people out, but I think going backwards.
I think the other thing is to also let sites and facility know if there are any other projects that are in the works.
Yeah.
Yes.
I had, Andy and I and Carmen, the city attorney, kind of discussed this project and said, well, especially after the comments when the Sites and Facilities Board was being appointed, and said, for, say, the train shelter, which we've talked about a little bit here, we've talked about the council, for the library, for these other projects that are likely to have COAs and work being done in the near future over the next few months, things like that. We will slow them down if need be from a process standpoint to
I think
ensure
they need to
that
go to sites.
they go to sites and facilities and they're through the process, but this one was actually noticed prior to even second read of that ordinance. And so, prior to appointments, certainly, I'm trying to remember when second read was, but we, given that we were already taking it to this meeting, Andy certainly felt that, well, to not take it to this meeting would be unwise because we've already kind of used council in some ways as a de facto sites and facilities, given how much input council's had, which in the future maybe will be lessened quite a bit.
Well, my understanding was that was part of what Site and Facilities was going to do, was take some of that off of staff. Take some of that off, so,
Right. So,
because we don't have a person on staff that can manage just this particular aspect.
right, and you know, I do think it is important, given that this is an important city site and facility, that sites and facilities would have a role to play in theory. But given the timing and all of that, I don't know that I have an opinion either way, I suppose.
What other discussion does the board have? Okay, do I have a motion concerning the COA for the Idaho Springs Powder House?
I'd like to make a motion to approve a full COA for the Idaho Springs Firehouse.
Second. Any further discussion? Okay, we're open here, we're all open books. Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? But please, so the motion passes, yeah, thank you. Please do an update with them, and I do think that this is gonna come back to sites and facilities when we get into phase 2, because this is not the new phase.
That's certainly true, and I will also certainly speak to timeline in that meeting, just to talk about why we went forward with the COA and why we felt that delaying it wouldn't, given all the work that's already been done, wouldn't benefit this particular project, I suppose, because Mike, you make a fantastic point, and this is kind of a unique circumstance, I suppose, given the timeline of how everything occurred, so.
I think this is also caught in transition, and trust me, man, the fire hose is coming. We have so much that needs to be done. Okay, we're gonna move on to design guidelines update and discussion and potential recommendation for Tim and Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your documentation too. We really appreciate that.
It's our pleasure.
I'm excited. I'm excited to get this going. And you guys, thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it. Okay, Dylan, I'm gonna turn this over to you.
Sure. So, as everyone knows, thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Scroll through my document. So, as everyone knows, we've been talking about the guidelines for a while now. Last month, we had a lot of suggestions that hopefully Maria and I, who've been both working on this quite a lot, have been, took that on board. Obviously, the most recent update we had between all of us was that everyone was looking at that spreadsheet that had all of the various guidelines for different communities to integrate things into the document we don't have already. I also went ahead and did redline everything in the guidelines. I had some formatting issues because of all the red lines, so note that some of the formatting I will have to change regardless moving forward, things like the table of contents, and everything. Once it's a clean document, once we're ready for that stage. But so please don't take too much credence into the formatting of the document. The other thing I'll note is it looks like a ton of red lines. The one thing that I really took into account was Mike's suggestion about categorizing these guidelines into different key sections, for example, so that way we, general principles, type of project, context and location, building mass and proportion, going down the list to say our guidelines do fall into these broad sections, and I noticed myself in the past, it was odd. There was we had solar panels close to something that was totally unrelated, and it's these things don't make any sense where they are in position. So, it looks like there's a ton of changes, but a lot of it is actually just I moved it all around and reformatted it. And so, since the last meeting, I think we've hopefully polished it to a point where, I'm saying hopefully we could even potentially motion to recommend that we recommend to City Council to adopt these new guidelines as updated. But certainly if we're not ready for that, we can keep doing edits, I'm happy to do that. Get them as perfect as possible. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, if we were prepared to recommend adoption, would be whether we think there needs to be any additional public engagement. And I only bring that up, Andy had mentioned, do we want to have some sort of special public meeting to talk about changes coming down the line? I personally don't know that that's needed. We've had at least 4, maybe 5 meetings where we've talked about changes to guidelines. We've also talked about it, we believe, at council. And it will, of course, have a public meeting at council if they were to adopt it. So, I'm happy to do what's needed in that respect as well. So that's kind of
where you are. So first, do we think we need another meeting focused on the public?
In my experience, I have found even if you have 10,000 meetings with the public, they're only gonna complain about it once it's finalized and done. So I don't know that that would be a good use of our time. That's not.
Shannon?
I guess I tend to agree with that. Like, they've had plenty of time to weigh in. If they have not, then they're probably not that concerned about it.
Well, there's actually a lot of strong feelings about historic preservation. I invite people to our meetings all the time.
It's going to be a 2 reading item. And we probably will know by the first meeting if there's a lot of consternation about it.
So you're saying kick it to council? I think that's a great idea.
I think
Council will it.
I think overall it looks pretty good. There's some numbering that needs to be fixed, and that's just a limitation of the software. But once you clean it up, then that is easier to fix.
Yeah, I was, that all of that numbering, formatting, all that, it's like 3 hours the day before I had to finalize it, because as I was moving things around, the numbering system did not follow it, and so I got it as formatted as I could, but said.
Well, it's understandable and you can follow it. You make it pretty when you're done.
I really like in the part 1 general information that you have done the historic district and the design buffer, because I do think that is going to be something that we're going to come up against moving forward. And while that is generally municipal code or building code and not us, I think it's important that that is a piece in this right off the bat. Like,
I think most people don't know it exists.
Right.
The buffer.
Well, it's buried, not really buried, but it's only
Kind of
1 or
buried.
2
It's
sentences.
a sentence in a
Yeah.
paragraph.
What would be 150-page code or whatever it is. And we have very few architectural design standards outside of our historic district generally in that code. This is one of them, but if you were building 3 blocks outside, you could build like an ultra modern brutalist, any structure you wanted, and there's only some limitation on it. So this is something that will be a key component for several developments coming through. We just had a community meeting yesterday about the community's vision for the future of Carlson Elementary site, which is directly next to our historic district, directly next to Central Hose House. And
I hope they make that clear to that real estate agent that it falls in that buffer zone.
Well, and I meant to mention that specifically to say, while we don't have that much control over uses, we do have control over the design, and it needs to complement the historic district. And because honestly, our historic district's 4 blocks or so east to west. This is a full city block that's being redeveloped essentially. So anyway, that's outside the purview of this, but I do think it's important to make that as clear as possible in as many places as possible.
To that end, possibly putting the word buffer on the map, maybe for the peak section, that would just make that
Makes
Like
use
clear.
buffer.
Yeah, it would just,
Draw
it would
line.
make that
Well, no,
more
in
clear.
You mean in the
Isn't it two
Yeah,
blocks,
part
not
one.
one block?
Right here.
Yeah,
So
so
say
so
mixed
truth
use
be
buffer.
told, this
Yeah.
is not the perfect map, and maybe there's a better map I could make.
This is still a lot better than that one that was
Was
there,
there.
it's good.
But I did, this is just,
It's pretty well.
so like the problem with this map is it's not purpose built for this particular application because it does, this is taken from a comprehensive plan to identify land use. So, you know, insofar as it accurately shows very clearly the historic district, I thought this was an appropriate map, but
Yeah.
truth be told, it might, and I personally think if we're otherwise ready to adopt this, I could, in the interim between now and do this, we could, you know, make a condition or just say, hey, we're gonna update this particular map so that instead of it having this mixed use designation around it, I could just show the historic district and I could do a
Buffer.
buffer.
I think that'd be better because it would reduce chances of confusion.
Right, because mixed use, like, well, I guess that it needs buffer based on the next paragraph, but the link isn't 100% clear
Yeah, that's,
based on the.
that's true, and that's a good point, and it almost maybe could be, and I'll update it also with this map that I put in attachment A, because in attachments down at the bottom of this document, you know, I updated it from that really old map to this map as well, just to make it pretty clear what the historic district is, but I can easily turn off the buffer for, or the shapefile, I guess, of this pink mixed use area, and just have it be the historic district to make it clearer as well. So that, I will definitely update the map in part one.
Can I also, I'm just gonna slight digress.
I think so.
Under city staff, can we, Maria, you helped on this, correct? Can we add Maria in there as our best and Maria's intern as part of city staff? Because this would be a CV credit for her as she moves forward.
Sorry, Maria. I put you in the photo and illustration.
I
was gonna say that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't
I-
steal your thunder. Oh, Andrew, yeah. Just by Andrew, official documents. Government. Sorry, I need to steal that from you.
Okay, so that movie, of course, apologies for that oversight and changing Andy to Andrew. Interestingly, Andy, it just says Andy in the current guideline. Well, he wasn't in the current guidelines, I guess, so never mind. He was not here in 2007.
No, it was, Alan.
Well, whoever was the city administrator.
Oh, no.
Alan was the planner
Oh, city
before
planner.
me.
Who was city
Yeah,
administrator?
Cindy. Anyway, I put Andy out, it's fine.
Really that contract, Cindy's fine. There's nobody between Cindy and Andy.
Andy was here when
Hard to know.
I don't know who was
anyway.
here before.
Okay, so I just wanna make sure everybody gets proper credit for this. I like to see the updated photo credits. Now I've stolen Patty's thunder, anybody else?
Well, I can tell you that I read this. I did have to stop because my eyes were going googie with all the red. I think it's very well put together. And I really like the way you separated everything out for our requests, especially Michael's. And, yeah, I don't think anybody's gonna read it for fun, but.
But I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, I think your suggestions were also based on making it easier for people to use and comprehend.
Yes.
Yes, I was gonna bring up that as you know, it's hard to say how much question will come up either from the public or the board, city council. But something I've used before is like there's 7 different reasons for why you make changes. And I don't know if that's something we want to anticipate or just see how things turn out, but it's this I've used from writing codes elsewhere. I'll just mention real. The first one's effectiveness, the second is efficiency, third is how easy to understand, how easy it is to find, how practical or how will it be applied, are there recurring issues we've seen in applications, and finally, are there gaps we've seen in the applications? And so part of the
We
idea
hit
is
all
if you had to explain why this is being done, you could literally go through, okay, here's all these changes. You can say, what was the reason for this change? Did it accomplish one of these things?
I think it hits, I mean, as you're going through that list, I'm like,
Thought we hit most of those too.
yeah. That's it, because
Did you
all
find
of those are
something we
reasons.
didn't hit?
And so I can send you that, so you don't have to.
Yeah,
Try
that
typing it
would be great.
When you read
Because-
through this, Michael, was there something that didn't hit one of those?
No, I think,
Like, they're not in a list that way, but I think all of those points are covered.
yeah, I think that they're going to, I think what's in there is gonna hit at least one of them.
I also like if you're doing this, where you put the no sign on it and make it very clear, like, well, because people read things and sometimes you have to read it and then you have to visually, like, you have to see it in not word format, but in image format for it to sink in, like, sometimes I need that. Like,
Well, I think that will be very key, which we didn't do much on that kind of how-to multimedia sort of guidance brochures for individual aspects over the last month or so. We focused on getting the nuts and bolts of this done, but I think with respect to, our ability, our new website and maybe creating more of like easily digestible items for the public and property owners, I think that would be key, is making it clear, like, here's good, here's bad, for like each element that's important. And then the other thing with our website is, given that we've now broken up into sections on the website, of course, once this is approved, I'll post the full document as a PDF in full, and I'll hyperlink as able, but I'm also want to break it up so that in individual sections, so if someone wants to say, okay, I'm interested in, I have almost like a flow chart, have a new building, or I want to do a new addition to an existing building, I need to go to part 3 of the guidelines. You can go to part 3, and then even still, you can easily jump to the section that you're particularly looking for. So that way, that ease of finding is a little bit easier for the online users, but we still have the full documents because.
have any of you guys looked at the new website? Dylan's already put some effort into, like, separating it up, like, it's already more user friendly in the historic preservation site than the old one.
I can pull it up.
Yeah, it looks.
Yeah, we're talking guidelines, but since this is a public hearing, we have a little bit more ability to. Right, okay, so here's our new homepage.
Guys, yes,
Um,
it's really nice, it's really nice.
The old one was rather plain.
The other one also had not been updated since like 2023, early in the year, because it was broken. It was a free state run, kind of like.
And then nobody could get in, right?
And then, John could get in, no one else could get in, it was like frozen at the time. So, there's a few ways you can jump. And I'm in the kind of back end, I guess, right now, because you can see I can edit and stuff. But anyway, community development is here, or you can go like historic preservation here. But if you go to community development, and I'm going to try to make it clear for historic preservation on this home page, but get to community development, it's kind of thing, you can see on the side here, historic preservation. Then we kind of have a brief history, historic preservation, chair information, and then all these different resources. Like design guidelines, this is where I'm thinking, like, right now we just have the document as a whole, but you can easily break it up where it says part 1 this, part 2 this, part 3 this,
I like that.
demo, and then kind of even break it up into subsections, and all it takes is me creating a couple of different PDFs or what have you. And then people can access kind of specifically what they're looking for, long term, someone had mentioned, like Mike mentioned, FAQs of how do I apply for tax credits, know if my project requires permits and approvals, what regulations I'll need to follow, and so this is like, I will obviously add to this. I think there's a lot more how-tos and FAQs. This would be where I will add like a comprehensive list of all of our designated sites and facilities, maybe a searchable list. Is my site historic? Is my home historic? And that will be a place where people can say, oh yeah, I know my address, and yeah, it is listed, and so then someone knows to then contact me and contact us before they can, and so how-to guides we can have here. I don't have any up at the moment, but it's all a work in progress. this, but the nice thing is I can just add these.
This
to
is
my
all the
heart's
stuff that we
content.
talked about, people having easy access to.
You know, again, like I said, this is like very much a work in progress, but I'm trying to build out the bones, so when we want to add the meat or have the time and effort to put all meat into it, it's,
Well, and I think we talked about before, under federal resources is to put in the interpretations.
right.
Its acronym is ITS, Interpretation of the Secretary's Standards. Those are the ones, if you have a really tough issue, those are the ones to look at. Because the tax credit division of the National Park Service basically had to make a decision, does this project get a tax credit or not? And so they explain why or why not was the tax credit granted.
That helps too, because when I have read just the National Park Service or the interior design guidelines, there's gray. There's a very definitive section that is
Yeah.
gray, in my opinion,
Well, that's because they've got 85,000 listings.
yes.
Actually, there's probably more than 100,000 now. And New Orleans has 13 listings with more than 20,000 buildings, so.
Okay, what other suggestions do we have for Dylan?
Good job.
It's definitely a lot clearer, huge improvement.
Yeah, Dylan and Maria, this is
Thank you,
fantastic, thank you. This was, because this is, I know we all were dreading, maybe it was just me, I was like, oh my God, this is such a big project. And so I think we've really done a good job, and you guys have done a great job of taking all the suggestions and updating.
And interpreting our suggestions.
Yes.
Well,
There was something we didn't get to, we discussed it, and I don't think it needs to be done this year. But that would be to expand on the section that deals with Idaho Springs architectural styles. Because that's part of people understanding what it is we're looking for. Because we're basically saying, we've got these styles of buildings here, and we're saying we're preserving something. It tells us these are the features that define the style are the things that usually you're trying to preserve.
true, yeah.
So I do have a question, and I'm not trying to stir, I know you're on a ticking time clock here, calm myself. Do we think that is something that we work on? Because it's part of a design guideline, or do we need to keep this to sites and facilities? I think the lanes are pretty clear, but I'm just making sure.
It's not really a sites and facility thing, but it could be. And it's more a matter of, for the time being, we could borrow the photos and the text from the state document. The state has done a document like this.
Wow.
For more than 100 different styles in the state. And so what we'd be doing is, from our survey that was done,
That was like 2 years ago, that survey.
is what are the styles that they mentioned there? And so we find those styles in the state's book and say, okay, we do that. And then under each of the photos, we put, here are the features that are considered what defines that style.
If
You may.
I think we should address this, and it's something we can work on
It could be
going forward.
it could be a handout thing later.
Yeah, I was thinking kind of two, like a short term and a long term. Like, I'd like to, these were last updated in 2007. I'm not saying we should update them annually or anything like this, but I do think revisiting these more frequently, even if it's just a
Once a
15
decade?
Yeah,
At
or,
least.
even if it was like let's do a 15-minute talk at the beginning of 2026, beginning of 2027, just like a quick work session item. What's evolved? Is there any need for change?
It often happens that someone will come in for a COA and say something we've never thought of, like, oh.
Right,
Huh,
so,
like with the
Right.
hot springs, how that was like very different than other.
yeah,
things
that's,
dealt with.
that is true. So I'm thinking maybe for the short term, we can start compiling this, make it a website tab, compile it, kind of like architectural design, architectural styles of Idaho Springs tab. It's a place where we can kind of, a formal location where we can direct people to that to say, here's what we're looking for, style wise, things
Well,
like that.
not
And
being
then-
part of the guidelines, we can update that whenever we want to. We don't have to go back and
Right, and maybe next time we update these, we specifically add that in.
Yeah, you wanna put it in eventually because it's actually, that's what you really wanna be enforcing.
Right.
Or preserving those parts of the building.
But having something there now for people to look at is
Mhm.
better than not, and waiting until we review these again.
Right.
I
Yeah.
do like the idea of like, so at the beginning of 2026, we take a look at, because I think I just did my 4-year, where are you guys in there?
Oh, I don't know, I just asked wonder.
I don't know.
I think we all
She's
just have.
She's got a list.
I know. I
Yeah,
do have a
we're
list.
2 to 4 years between. So at the end of, so maybe like this goes on our agenda, beginning of 2026, we look at what have we looked at over 2025, because you're right, like, we've seen things with the River Sound project, and they wanted an elevator, you know, the building on top, and with the club hotel, like, every one of those has informed some of what we've done in here in the hot springs. So,
I mean, I don't think it's totally inappropriate if we have minor updates every few years, that we work through them quickly, add them in, it doesn't have to be 4 meetings, anything like that, and then it's a quick item at council to adopt a new update, because then it also shows, we kind of talked about, once we have, even if we didn't have any huge substantive changes between 2007 and now, it shows now that we're enforcing things that were adopted today, rather than adopted 17 years ago. So even if we updated it every 3 years, every 5 years, that's a lot.
I actually
Sorry.
like, even though, because I like the idea that we are continuing to, like, our goal, our stated responsibility is approving COAs and, you know, discussing and oversight for COAs. But I like the idea that we are also a body that is trying to keep up with what's going on architecturally and allowing for that change.
And I think one of the other major goals is, and it's a goal because you can work towards it, but it's difficult to reach, is the idea that the average citizen should be able to pick up the document and understand it. Right? You know, any adult should be able to understand what this is about.
Do you think, I think this document, when I base it on other stuff that I read, this document is pretty readable. Like, I can tell that this was written, you know, more for the public.
It's much simpler than Georgetown, which is 3 volumes.
It's not the most easily digestible document I've ever read, you know, when you compare this to like our comprehensive plan, which is all fancy graphics and, you know, like lots of pictures and lots of little charts and things, like you can read that a little bit more easily maybe, and it's less technical. There are technical elements to this, but I think your average homeowner, if I sat with them for an hour, we could get them to a point that they're pretty clear, whereas some documents I talk about, it could take days.
And part of that will be getting either to more photos or more sketches.
Right.
There are literally thousands of sketches that are out there.
Well, and that's also a glossary so that people understand the technical terms. The picture, if we're not talking about an architectural detail, what is the technical name for this? What does it look like? Because you may not recognize the name, but you're like, oh, that is on the corner of my house.
Yeah, because the thing that isn't obvious when you use a document like this is how much jargon there actually is in it, and how many words that the public doesn't use that are in a document like this.
I think so. I think though, I like the idea that maybe next year our goal is working on building that, here are the Idaho Springs architectural styles. Because I think that's gonna take a little more research on, you know, and just a little more diving down the rabbit hole on our part. Plus, this was our 2024 goal, was to get these design guidelines done. So I would be, how do you guys feel about that?
I think it's not gonna be as hard as you think, because we have plenty of resources to plagiarize and pull information
And then
from.
we have Mike.
So,
Well,
you saw me go like this.
you know, I'm very close, you know, I'm here in town, it's easy to walk around, take a picture of something.
Right, and we have that survey where everything was listed in there,
Sure.
so if we go to the document you were talking about and we pick out the styles that were labeled in there.
They're very
I think it's
specific
gonna
with
be-
each house
It's
too.
true.
But it's gonna come pretty easy together, and then we dial it down into each house, once we have, say, maybe we have 10 styles. And then we just take pictures of houses and go, you are half and half.
I also think though, that particular, from that survey, that spreadsheet that shows like your house is this style, your house is this style. I think that should be something that people can look up.
Right, and I will still get that in Excel document form, I promise. I have not done so still.
Yeah, that survey is not, like, I don't think that's easily transferable.
Right, but they should have,
It might be possible to turn the PDF, it'd be a long process, but you could turn the PDF each page into it's not an Excel spreadsheet, but a CSV spreadsheet. And then you could turn the CSV spreadsheet into an Excel spreadsheet.
I'll just read it when you're done.
That's up to you, my friend. You do what is it.
well, I still
It's
think
it's
we
50
can find
pages.
the spreadsheets.
You
I
don't have
still
it?
think I can find the Excel version of it, because it had to have been Excel originally, right? And so I,
Before it was compiled.
It's possible it was a Word spreadsheet, but most likely you would assume people would do an Excel.
Didn't you tell me you
Spreadsheet.
tried to track her down and you did not?
right, go ahead.
She's big in the Buena Vista historic preservation.
I think there's still a few outlets I could find. In there, if I can get it, I still will try to get it without
Okay.
having to convert anything.
And related to this, is anything happening in terms of moving on a grant for doing another survey? Neighborhood survey?
I don't think so, not in the last year,
Does the city have any historic grant applications in process?
not the city does not know.
Okay, because the deadline is March, the next round. But you need to get to them several months in advance.
So what are you thinking that we should look at?
Well, for example, if there was any way we could get money for the library, it sounds like there's a significant problem there. But after that, I would say one of the neighborhood surveys.
We actually, and we talked about that, like the West End survey
Mhm.
and then like the middle section and then the East End. Because we
There's,
talked about
there's an
that.
awful lot of Victorian houses as you go west from here.
So could we have you look at that and see what's available? Because that actually goes towards my personal, and you guys know this is my stated goal. I really want to see what we can do for designated local historic districts to help people with, I'm calling it like a facade improvement, but like, let me help you improve the outside of your house, through grants or things like that. We talked about that at the last meeting. How do we do that? Do we do that through local designation? And I think that we've talked about the neighborhood surveys are the first step to that.
How big are these neighborhood surveys? Is it really varied?
Well, it was in her study.
Right,
She broke it out into several subgroups and she identified sort of priority areas.
I think I
She had-
remember that,
She
yeah.
had 7 recommendations and 4 of the recommendations were neighborhood surveys. And I assume she was taking into account in terms of, okay, what was a likely budget that would go with this number of properties? I don't know what they cost now. The last time I was involved with the survey, it was about $400 to $500 per building is what they were costing. But they've changed the format since then to I think, less expense, doing something that's less expensive, I think.
We'll be at like 900 something buildings. So let's just 900 something times 400. We need a grant. We need a grant. And I think the city is more happy to let things go right along if we can say, we'd like a grant. So can we look at, see what's available?
Sure. Yes. Yeah, I think the 2 priorities ought to be, is there anything that needs emergency attention? Right. And then how can we expand the number of buildings that
So-
are identified?
I want to back up a little bit because the library is going to land on your sites and facilities lap pretty quickly. The library, they went to the gutter, and I don't know if you were there, but they went to the gutter and they identified a hole in the, what is that?
There's like an ice and rain membrane.
A membrane.
Water
And
ice.
so they took the gutter off because the gutters are historic gutters and there was a hole in the membrane. And when you look at where the hole was, based on that southwest wall, it's conceivable that leak could have created the damage that has come down the wall. It's like in a bell shape.
Because the other issue was that particular space where that hole was, water tends to pool. So water would pool, it would like slowly get in this leak and then be behind the water and ice barrier and just sit there and for, months potentially, so.
But they may also have to put a, what did they call it? Like a small, it's an official word for a ramp inside the gutter to help the water, to help keep the water from pooling. I talked to Tim and Chris about it. So what they decided to do in an emergency idea is, and I'm delighted that the Sites and Facilities is going to be dealing with this because I don't think that this has been dealt with appropriately when I say that in public. That they want to let it dry out. And they also think that there was some chimney damage when the graffiti was done to it. And they think that the people that graffitied it might have stepped on the gutter and torn that membrane. Because like the timing kind of lines up when the
And
leak
this
started.
is on the roof of the building or?
Yeah, so if you're standing on Minor and you're looking at the library and you have the little walk down entrance,
Mhm.
it's over on this southwestern wall right here. And so the chimney, there has been leaking on the inside. They found a little bit leaking on the inside. The chimney doesn't have a hat, doesn't have the cap that sits on top of it. But they took the gutters down all around that corner where the chimney is and going out in both directions, both west and south. And the water does not flow, it's not a steady flow in the pool because they don't have, the gutters are straight. There's no angles in the gutters because they're historic gutters. So the first step was to stop the leak because the leak has gotten worse.
Hold up the,
Yes, thank you. So it's from basically where the window is, going over to the chimney, and then going from the chimney over towards the hose house.
and you can't really see it from this, from this far away from the street, but there is staining,
And then that decorative half brick up at the top under the gutter is bulging out. And then you see it down, you can't see it below the tree, but down along more of the decorative, it's also bulging out. So the leak has kind of come into a bell shape. And then when you go inside, you see the leak on the inside in the upper room and down in the basement. So I think there has been, I mean, from my non-architectural eyes, if I saw that in my house, I'd be freaking out because there's been significant damage. But what the roofer suggested was to get the leak stopped and see if it dries out over the winter. Makes me a little anxious, I'm not gonna lie, but
Can you say dry out and winter in the same sentence?
well,
if the leak is stopped though,
if it's now sealed properly on the outside, then the
Then
inside.
you need to actually expose it on the inside so it dries out, because if it's kept closed, it might turn to mold, which is a much more serious problem.
so
So like take the drywall out?
it's plaster, it's lath and plaster in there.
It's the type of thing that I think you were mentioning it. It's that you need a forensic engineer to actually look at it and say, what's the nature of the problem here?
I'm
And this
so
is
excited for
definitely a
sites and
sites and
facilities
facilities
to
discussion
get their
for
teeth into
that
this one.
particular issue.
Yeah, so I'm just giving them an update, like,
And,
yeah.
and that would be seeing if there's a possibility. See, they won't give you emergency grants for failure to maintain. But if it's possible to make the case, okay, the city did try and repair it. And
But they're
it looks like there's still a problem. Would that then be eligible to
But they're
get a
also
grant?
looking at bringing it through insurance, because if this was because Andy asked the roofer, that was the whole point of this, I actually got a little distracted. Andy asked the roofer, could this have been, because the hole in the guard was like this big, like the ball of somebody's foot. And he said, could that have happened when they went up there and graffitied the chimney? Because they went up in that area where the leak was and graffitied the chimney.
How did they get up there? Did they climb the drain pipe?
There's a, in the back of the building, so over, here, there's
That's where
like
the
a
elevator is.
lower roof and then front, and that's only like 10 feet tall, so you could like step on it. So they step on something, because there used to be, you can kind of see the decorative, on the gutter or the drain pipe, there's these decorative holders.
Right.
So we
Front holes,
removed
you
them
mean?
from the lower, but on the back, someone stepped on one of those, they think, got on that roof, and then it was an easy climb up to the next roof to get on top.
So I think,
But a good rock climber could get up that.
but I think
That's
they're gonna
true.
try to go through insurance because they think this might have been something that can go through insurance because of the graffiti.
Yeah.
If that is not possible, then it would need a grant. God, I can't wait for this to come.
But it means probably by November coming to a decision on what to apply for. In other words, in the next 2 months, between the two boards to make a decision as to what to apply for if the deadline is March. I don't know if they've changed it, but it used to be they wanted to contact them at least 2 months in advance.
Okay,
They wanted to see a draft of what you were doing 2 months in advance of the
and that
deadline.
needs to be on our list, because that's gonna take both of our boards. So let me just bring us back. Is there anything else on the design guidelines? How do we feel about recommending that the design guidelines go to council? I will take a motion. Are we happy with the design guidelines, other than the few changes that we have given to Dylan?
Well, I think what we discussed last time is that this was for us to look at the changes, and then it was gonna come back next month as a clean version. And then we would be voting on the clean version.
I can do that.
I'm okay with that. As long as, I would like this to go to council before the end of the year. That's what I would like to see. I'm okay with that. How do you guys feel about that?
Well, if I know red, I would have read through all that red stuff.
It was good that you read the red stuff.
You need to have the red line version in case anyone asks.
So when we go to council though, we have a red line version available.
Yeah, do you think it's best to like have a red line version and
Oh, I like the red,
clean version
line,
in the
even-
packet?
it made it kind of difficult to read, but I could see what had changed in a glance, and that was kind of nice.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
could
think they need
put,
to see both.
I mean,
Yeah.
while it will then be a packet that's probably 500
Call us Clearly Creek
with
County.
all of the budget and finance items and all of that, I can certainly do a clean and
You probably wanna have both,
I'm gonna say yes to both.
because some people are gonna want the red lines and some people are gonna wanna just read the final product.
I would say both. All right, so we will see a clean version next month. Okay,
happy with that. And I'll make those couple of changes that we talked about and I'll put that into the clean version. Do you want also to see a new red line version, or are you happy to just have a clean packet?
I think just the clean.
We've got this red line version.
Yeah, it'll
I mean, the main
show
thing I
some-
saw was just the problems with auto numbering. That it takes hours to fix.
And adding Maria.
I can add the auto, I can work a little bit more on the auto number. Well, in the clean version, it'll have all.
Yeah, I don't think for the red
numbers
line, you should waste your time numbering it, because that's a headache nobody needs.
And if it's possible to do the map.
Yeah, we had talked about
Absolutely.
like
I'll do
updating
that.
the map.
I'll update the map to show the buffer and I'll also update it, so it's just the historic district.
So it doesn't say mixed use, it says buffer zone.
Right, yeah.
So it's
Again, it
very
was like
clear.
Not I just took a map that already existed and shoehorned it in, so it's better to have a clean one.
Okay, so next month, let's plan on, that's what we'll be voting on, is to send this to council, so council gets this in December.
Perfect, okay, fantastic.
All right, CLG annual report update?
Yes, I think we will definitely be out here by 7:30 unless anyone wants to chat. I just wanted to make a note of this, that I'm starting to work, you have to do an annual update as a CLG every year. I put the report in here, I've started working on it, but I will have a draft that shows all of it into the packet next month.
Okay.
When do you have to turn it in?
The deadline, I believe,
It
is
used to be in the
November,
summer.
I think it's November 1st. Let me make sure. Annual, let's see. Due by November 1st. So what I was thinking is I may reach out to some of you in the next month to get some input, questions, things like that. But I will plan to have a draft of the report for October 16th next month for Hprc. We'll have that on there. We'll have a clean version of this on there. That might be it for that meeting. I'm not sure. I don't know of any COAs coming in the next month. I think the train shelter is not quite there.
I would like to I would like the
That's
train
getting
shelter
pushed.
towards sites and facilities.
Absolutely, and also council had talked about, we cannot fund a $1.5 million train shelter right now, so we're gonna have to
Grants.
figure out grants for that as well. So anyway, that's gonna be a slow process, we'll go through sites and facilities, things like that, so.
We're not supposed to get that
nothing else.
train, we're not supposed to get that train back until after next year, because they wanna put it into service for the summer.
Yeah,
So-
well, Janine from council was up there today, actually, and was looking at the train, it looks really good, it's all painted.
You talking about the passenger car? or the-
Yeah, because we saw it
and it wasn't painted.
No, they were still into, they had just done all the windows. She said, it looks good. Did she take pictures?
She took one picture of her with it, actually. I don't know if she took any inside pictures.
I need some
but she
interior-
got in and
You
she
guys,
asked, like,
have you been up?
Um,
When they finish it, we should ask, can we go look at it?
absolutely. It looks really good. I think it's getting close. Anyway, that was all I wanted to say about that.
Okay. Anything else from anybody?
Whatever happened with that brewery thing? Did
Well,
they come back? Did they
we
come back?
discouraged them from, I think they realized that that site wouldn't really work.
Right.
There's too many challenges. There's not gonna be a
Creek beds.
70-foot building there. They're looking at some other sites.
Within Idaho Springs?
Yes, something on the east end, maybe if they can get into a partnership on the Carlson redevelopment, they think that would be a really cool site because they want walkability to the historic district.
I still can't have 7 foot.
No, well, truth be told, we talked to them more and they said, well, we're proposing 70 feet because it's such a tight site there, but if we have more space, we could probably make it 35, 40, 45-foot building, spread it out and get the same
And if they went down
flow and
though,
stuff, and they could potentially go down a little bit.
because that's not right next to the creek bed like this site was.
Right, it still has quite a low water table, shallow water table in
Like
the
10
historic
feet?
district, something like that. I know Julie from the Opera House building.
The water table's probably pretty high.
Yeah, she said like they were getting water at like 8 feet or something, I don't know.
Well, that's further, well, no, because the original creek, if you look at the pictures of the original creek, it's closer to where Carlson was.
So anyway, they're still,
Okay,
I haven't
so-
talked to them in a while, but they were circling a couple of properties to see if it would work.
Okay.
Pending
I'm just
other
curious
stuff
because I
going on.
don't remember us hearing anything back after that.
We were
Yeah,
not, we were polite, but we were not super.
I definitely
we were
don't
not
think,
positive
I
too
think
much
they
higher.
recognized there would be, like, they couldn't do precisely what they want. And
Yeah,
it just
it's a
wouldn't
real
work and they
small
don't want, if they do anything, they want it to be something that the city's excited about rather than something that is like
They want to be a good neighbor.
pushed through.
I would like to see that. Okay, is there anything else from anybody else? I would take a motion to adjourn.
I moved to adjourn.
So 7:31. we adjourn. Sorry, I know, you
So
know.
close.
Well, per my, for this, it says 7:29.
Oh, so, a little fast.
All right, I will end this and,